Good afternoon, all you humans on the interwebs, and thank you so much for joining us today for the 7th Rosefest Community Conversation Series in partnership with Lifeline. My name is Ashanti Kunene, and as always, I'm your hostess with the mostest. If this is your first time joining us, you really are late to the party, and I would encourage you to go and watch our previous conversations where you can find on the Rosefest YouTube channel. But for context, for all you newbies, the Rosefest Community Conversation Series seeks to create spaces for us to engage on difficult topics in an open, honest, and candid manner, where we are attempting to move past the point of simply problematizing to actively sharing solutions and insights to help each other heal as people. Today, we are going to be talking about women in the workplace, the apparent chasm that is a gender pay gap, and that murky glass ceiling that you can never get quite close enough to break. So what we do know is that patriarchy punishes women in a variety of ways, because in a nutshell, we're not at home, barefoot and pregnant in some man's kitchen, and we have the audacity to think we can make it in a man's world. This is what we're talking about today. And in conversation, I have Hagar Grazer, artist, activist, and systems theorist. We have Ms. Jade Lee from music industry marketing professional. We have the Rosefest matriarch joining us again, Shakaina Donald, thank you, Mama. And from our Lifeline partners, we have the chairwoman of the board, Nonhlanhla Mkhize, who has graced us with the presence today. Thank you, ladies, so much for taking the time to engage me in conversation. What I find interesting about the topic of our discussion today is that what women should be and do at work, regardless of industry, is essentially a reflection of how society polices women and their career aspirations, whatever they may be. As women, we are socialized at a young age to be submissive in preparation for marriage, and men are socialized into thinking they will always be the boss. Last week, we spoke about how educating and empowering young girls has resulted in more women being able to fend for themselves financially and even manage men, both at home and in the workplace. The very same men who grew up in a society that tells them you are supposed to be in charge, and if you're not, there's something wrong. So I'm hoping that our conversation today will elicit some interesting, juicy things that we can take with us and move forward. But before we get into that, a few house announcements. We are recording the session, as always, posting to YouTube after the live session. If data is a concern, please tune in via YouTube, as it's more affordable than Zoom. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A function in Zoom or the comment section on YouTube. Our team is on hand to field any of your questions. And then lastly, please make sure you like, follow, share, hashtag Rosefest 2020, tag all of us, make the digital part happen. Yes. And without further ado, I am going to ask my guests to please take a few minutes to introduce themselves to our viewers today. And Jade, we can kick off with you. Tell the people who you are.
Cool. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me as part of this talk. I think just to give a brief introduction to who I am is I obviously started my career working in advertising. So I worked in advertising for a few years with youth culture brands that use music as a vehicle to speak to the audiences. So working with artists and music culture at its center, really. From there, I worked at a major label for a long time. And obviously in the marketing departments, learning all the ins and outs about the music industry and the music business. And fast forward to where I am now, I work in marketing for music TV channels currently. But I think above and beyond all of that, I'm just someone who's very passionate about music and the industry, and really about music coming out of Africa and how we build just a better sort of infrastructure for the future.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us, Jade. Hagar? Unmute yourself, Mama.
Sorry. Here I am.
No problem.
Hi. So I am. I've done lots of things. I'm a lecturer. I work in music and tech and have done so for many years at various roles. Within it, I've worked with government. I've worked with all sorts of places. And I think the reason I choose to, like you introduced me, call myself an artist, activist, and a systems theorist is that systems thinking is really what's underpinned all of the work that I've done, and really understanding how complexity emerges from society and like looking at the big picture. And I lectured in that sort of vein. And then on the music industry front, when I mean artist activist, I think that whatever role it is that I've occupied in the music business or that I do, I always fight for the artist from the artist's perspective. So that's me.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Miss Mkhize, Nonhlanhla Mkhize, chairwoman of the board.
Hi everyone, I'm Nonhlanhla Mkhize. I work, the first one that you all know now, I'm the chairperson of the board of Lifeline, Pittsburgh. I work for local government, a municipality. I'm in a senior management position in the municipality. I also lecture part-time, and I'm a mother of 3, a grandmother as well. And I've been involved in a lot of humanitarian work, and I've worked a lot in the space of the NGOs, and I've got a lot of interest in community development, so I always find myself in those spaces, even when I try to withdraw, it always calls me back, so that's what I do. Yeah, I also have a lot of interest in the subject today, so I'm looking forward to the engagements. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We're looking forward to engaging with you. Shekinah.
Hi everyone. My name is Shekinah Tandy Donnell. Okay, it's not Tandy, it's Tandy. I am a songwriter, a wannabe songwriter, singer, wannabe singer, and also I own a festival, and we're just trying to make it be more than about the music. We really want to engage with our audience in many ways, and I think Rosefest, our Bright Future Talks, is one of them. So that's me, and I'm a daughter. The Rosefest Talks have taught me to announce, myself like I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, and be proud about those things. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving us the space to have these conversations. This is fantastic, fantastic work. So to jump right in, the first question for today, I'm going to pick on you, Jade, to start here, okay? But the first question looks at how does the societal perception of what women are supposed to be, impact us in the professional environment, right? So speaking to the different ways that patriarchy punishes us for being at work and not at home barefoot and pregnant and just playing the role.
I think from my personal experience, I think maybe a few generations ago, or like the last generation, like my mum, right? I definitely think there were a lot more challenges, and it was big, like people would raise their eyebrows if you were a working woman and you were a career woman and career focused, right? But I think now in 2020, there are a lot more women, definitely not reflective or equal of the women that should be in those spaces, but there are other women that are working their way, whether it's in corporate or, entrepreneurs or business owners, etc. But because of that, I do think that there's a perception that maybe someone like me who's young, doesn't have any kids, isn't married, there's a perception that maybe I'm too strong, I'm opinionated, I'm aggressive, I don't have that sort of nurturing instinct, as it were, if I was a mother. And then on the other side of the coin, the kind of expectation is that I can work longer hours because I don't have those things, and then I can be always on. And I should operate at such a higher level because I don't have the everyday things like a home and kids and cooking and all of that. So yeah, I think from my perspective, it's difficult because I think that people really view us in a way that's like, you must be like aggressive to succeed as well. So there's definitely like a perception that's placed on you in your work environment that I don't think is fair or right, because men don't have to deal with the same sort of pressure. Men are just men, right? They're humans, but women, not so much.
Yes, that's so true. I think speaking about working longer hours because you don't fit the traditional mold of being a woman. So if you don't have a home and babies to go home to, you must work longer. So Hagar, I want to bring you in here as a systems theorist and thinker from a systemic point of view. What is this thing? And because it has very real, tangible effects on how you experience work as a woman.
Well, I think firstly, before I get like nerdy on the system stuff, like I just like, I think Jade said something so interesting, and I think it's important to pause there and to say that, you know, you asked the perception of what women are supposed to be. And I think a lot of the sadness for me is that we're supposed to be men, is that in order to succeed, we have to be like that. Um, and and that's okay, you know, there's beautiful qualities about masculinity, and bless them, you know, they built our roads, you know. But I think I think that so much of femininity is suppressed in the workplace. And I think that I remember hearing about, there was this article, it was like some 80s business column, and they were giving advice for how to decorate an office. And the advice to the man was put pictures of your family all over the office so that you look like a provider. And the advice to the woman was hide pictures of your family so that it doesn't seem like you're distracted by family.
Wow.
And I thought that was really interesting because it's sort of true. I think that there is this expectation in the, and I think, you know, if we go into the system behind it, I think, you know, the way, one of the interesting reason for why the pay gap exists is that the system, and here's the systemic part, is often favored to treat it as a negotiation, which is a very masculine type of thing. So you're going in and you're asked, what is your expectation for your salary? And I think that women somehow tend to be more like agreeable and grateful, and we don't necessarily come in with that like, I deserve this or I'm entitled to that. And I think we often hurt ourselves so much in that process. So so for me, I think that really is something really interesting to unpack and talk about, is how do we introduce femininity into the workplace, and are we supposed to be men to succeed? Is that the end goal, you know?
Sure. Shekinah, do you want to come in there? See you snapping your fingers. What do you think?
I think that's really interesting. Especially because as a female, we also end up thinking the same way. I also end up kind of thinking that, okay, this is what you need to do in order to be a woman. I need to be more assertive. So if I'm going to a show, I don't want to be girly. I want to wear pants. I want to be able to stand my ground in the space, you know, which really is all that I was thinking. But I really like what you're saying, Hagar. Like, how do we bring femininity into like the space where it's a part of it, you know, and men are also kind of okay to be in touch with their feminine sides, because it's such a space where we try and be such strong and hard shelled things that we aren't built to be. We're soft people, and we're, you know, we empathize a lot. And I think that it's weird that as females we also end up thinking the same way, like, oh, I can call Jade, you know, on Friday night at 9 p.m. she's not putting kids to sleep or whatever. But at the end of the day, I think that also takes me back to how my family sometimes have weird perceptions of, are you okay, Shekinah? You know, you're 26, you're living by yourself in the middle of a pandemic. But they wouldn't feel that way about my 19-year-old cousin who has a boyfriend living with her. They're like, oh, she's fine. She's with him. He's looking after her. Oh, you're okay because you're alone. And it's like, there's so much power in being alone and being a female and being alone. But for some reason, we just have such a warped perception of you know, of women in the workplace and women being independent. And so I think that's where I am.
Sure. And then Sanjay, do you want to come in here? What do you think? What do you think about the societal perception of what women are supposed to be, and this idea of bringing softness and femininity into the workplace to make it part of, you know?
I think I'm in agreement with what Jade first said about the perception that if you're a woman in the workplace, you have to be aggressive, you have to be harsh to come across as if you are assertive and as if you measure up to men in the workplace. But at the same time, I feel like it's very important that we bring in that perspective that Hagar is bringing in, that naturally women are nurturing. and we need to bring that into the space of the workplace. I feel that as women, we have the power to transform the spaces that we come into, instead of expecting us as women to measure up to the men that we find in the workspace. How do we transform the space to be conducive enough for women, to accommodate women in the workplace? I think for me, that is the one thing that we need to bring in, that we've kind of like failed to do. Instead, you find a lot of women trying to measure up to men, trying to live up to the standards that have been set already, to look like a man, to be aggressive. At the end of the day, I feel like in turn, women are the ones who actually end up perpetuating this kind of cycle where women are not treated as equals, but are always expected to perform like 10 times more than what their male counterparts will be doing in the workplace. So we have a lot of work to do as women in transforming the space to accommodate other women coming into the space to work, not for them to change themselves, because at the end of the day, yes, we'll still have children, but we still want to be in the space to be able to work, to be able to be treated the same as our counterparts. And I feel I've read something about, well, it was written by Cheryl, where she says, Cheryl Sanders, she talks about her experience when she was pregnant, and when she realized she was working for Google, and she realizes that actually there is a need for creating the environment to accommodate pregnant women in the workspace, accommodate women with children in the workspace, so that they are not limited by them having children and having to go back home and look after the children. Create that space so that it's conducive enough for them to still focus and be able to focus on their children. I heard what Haga brought in about the transforming spaces where women need to remove. We can't do that. And naturally, we won't be able to do that. We want to see our families, and that's what's driving us to doing what. So the best thing is, let's transform the space to accommodate all of us in the workspace so that we feel we belong.
Sure. So speaking to the whole thing of trying to be a man, needing to be more aggressive, needing to, basically change yourself, to fit into a workspace, that was a perfect segue to the second question, is that looking at the difference in cost of showing up for work between men and women. What does it cost you to go to work as a woman compared to a man? What are the things you have, like exactly like you've just outlined on Atlanta? Who's going to be taking care of my kids if I'm at work? Like, does a man think about these things before going to work? Or does he have the privilege, which he does, to just go to work and not think about the care work and all the unpaid labor that we do at home? So just, let's speak to the cost and difference of showing up for work between men and women. Hagar, do you want to come in there?
Well, the cost. I suppose, there's there's the reality, I suppose, that, and I think actually the data says that the pay gap applies most to women who have kids. So I think mothers are actually the greatest victims of this particular thing. And so essentially, if you think about a mom, she's got 3 jobs, she's head of household, head of kids, or like primary caregiver for kids. And, as well as the role that she occupies at work. And, so already you've turned up with 2 jobs that have just happened a couple of hours ago, and that are happening through the day. And, just like to hold that and have empathy for that, there's all the other stuff that comes with it. There's the kind of objectification and having to look a certain way and turn up a certain way. But I think that if you really, I think I also read somewhere that there were 3 times as many single moms as there are single dads, I think in the USA or something like that. So you can see that there's this entire burden on the whole system. The women are already arriving with this stuff and then having to kind of do everything else. But actually another really, I think, hopeful stat is that it turns out that women with kids show no difference in productivity either at work. It's not like any of that is actually impacting the quality of
Matters.
your work. In fact, you're excellent in multitasking, and you're better at prioritizing because you know what's important. And I feel like that sort of data really needs to be front and center, is to kind of look at the actual data and say, is it so that, or is it true that, you know, women are incapable of holding all of these things? But yeah, it's expensive on all levels to the woman, but they can certainly hold it.
Yeah. And Nhlanhla, what do you think? Because I was coming off your point about the difference in cost of showing up at work, but also touching on what Hauka said, because she's spoken about you've already done 2 or 3 different jobs before you even got into work.
Yeah, true. That is so true. The sad thing is that women are expected to be all rounders, to be good at home, good at work, good everywhere in the spaces that we occupy. So already that alone is a difference. It's what sets us apart from the men that we work with, who don't necessarily have to take kids to school first before going to work. You take kids to school first, and then you show up at work at the time that you are expected to knock on. You also leave at the time you're expected to leave at 4, and then you rush to the kids. So that's the sad part. And at the same time, we are always reduced to the fact that we are women, we are not good enough. But I also feel like we also have these societal limiting beliefs that we are not enough, we're not good enough, we are not like men, and we'll never be like men. So we always unconsciously reduce ourselves to those limiting beliefs. And these are imposed by society. And unfortunately, we try and live up to that. If you're not going to live up to that, we go back to this oppression that we have to exert, so that everyone pays respect and acknowledges that you are better, you are good, you are more like, you are almost like the other ones. I read something that was saying in most cases, the glass ceiling in your life is the partner that you have. Well, some of us don't even have those partners, are single parents, and you're expected to run around and do everything. But it basically says that the people that you have as your support system will either help you to move forward in the workspace and to prosper in the workspace, or will hold you back because you are always running around after them. So you limit what you can provide and what you can do. We are faced with as women.
Sure, that's so powerful, especially when you spoke about how we unconsciously reduce ourselves in the workspace. And Jade, I want to bring you in here, thinking about how we do that. And I think also, to be fair, and also to speak to the nuance of the conversation, it's not just men that make us reduce ourselves. Also, this whole thing of there can only be one alpha female in the workspace, you know, how we also perpetuate these things by patriarchal princessing in the workplace. So bring it in there. I see you shake, I see you.
Yeah, I think just to go back to the cost thing, right? So something that hasn't been mentioned, but like is quite obvious, is definitely like the cost in your appearance. I think definitely from like a work perspective, whatever environment that you're in, you need to show up in a certain way, if that makes sense. So you need to look as though you invest in yourself, whether it's from like a clothes perspective or a nails perspective. A lot of us, it's to do with hair. Like when I first started working years ago with my afro, it was a bit like, you know, now it's definitely become like I'm thankful I can wear my afro to work, and there's many other women who do the same. But in some spaces, it's still like you need to look a certain way to have a certain effect in your space. And if you don't look that way and you don't invest in yourself, then maybe you're not the right person for a leadership role. Or, you know, or maybe you're not the person that takes your career seriously, which I don't think is the same that applies to men. I've seen men that the same things they wear to work is what they wear on the weekend, you know? So that's definitely for me a genuine sort of cost implication for us specifically. Like, hair is expensive, nails are expensive. And nobody actually says this to you, but it's part of the work culture that you look a certain way, especially if you're looking to kind of climb the corporate ladder, for example, you know? And then just coming back to like reducing yourself in the workspace, I think for me, that's imposed by other females. Throughout working, my mentor has always sadly been a male. So a male has taken me in and, you know, this Jade, you need to show less empathy. You need to be aggressive and straightforward and to the point, you know, be less female, basically, to succeed. And when you do meet women in the space, it's almost as if they feel like, you know, they've been through so much. How can they just, you know, give you this to you on a silver platter, and you must kind of go through the same persecution or oppression that they went through, which for me is just very sad. And I've always said that I would like to be a mentor to other females because I just feel like I haven't had that in my own career. So it's confusing for me why we do this and why we subject each other to this kind of treatment. It's also our responsibility to change the narrative and to actually have honest conversations with these women about how we can interact and lift each other up. Because if I can get there, it means the next person can get there and the chain continues.
That's so true. That's so true. Sheikh, I want to bring you in here, but to close off, what you said, Jade, reminds me of something a friend of mine, Kuma, once told me. She said, people don't realize that if you are the only candle that is lit in a room full of other candles, all that you will lose in lighting the next person is a little bit of wax. You don't lose your light. So bending over to light the next person's candles so that they can also shine does not cost you the essence of who you are. It's just gonna cost you that much wax. So kind of, you like come in there.
I'd argue you become brighter even.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I also thought of something a friend always says to me as a joke. She's like, men love each other. She's always like, men love each other. And we always have like the rest of our days about how men love each other. Because it's just so strange. As girls, we can have females that are like, I'm not a girl's girl. Like, I don't get along with girls. That's why I have a lot of guy friends, hang with the boys. But I don't feel like I've ever heard men being like, oh no, I don't really get along with men. That's why I have a lot of female friends. And I feel like it's that thing for me where I feel like we don't support each in the workplace enough to say, no, this is what we need, this is what we demand, this is what is gonna allow us to be ourselves and work accordingly, you know. And for me, with how much, what does it cost? It just costs so much more emotionally, because most of the time it's not going to work is not the same experience as guys. And I don't know, sometimes I feel like maybe it's because I try and say we have a womb. I say we have a womb, they don't have a womb, they don't understand. You know, we have cramps, they don't understand. We have this, we don't understand. But I like what, I don't know who said it, but how productivity doesn't change with us. No matter what happens, no matter how much we are carrying, whatever load, our productivity stays the same, if not even more. We are able to handle a lot more because that's what we're doing in our own personal lives at home. And we kind of bring that system that we use at home into the workplace of we can do many things at once. And because we're trying to prove ourselves, we try and do that. But I think for my industry, like Jade says, that was my point. Sorry, I went off in the beginning, but my point in my industry is that it costs me a lot more to show to work. And I think that's why I get into a lot of disputes with promoters or people that are trying to book me or hire me. It costs me more. The highest paying artist in our country goes on stage with the DJ. I can't just go on stage with the DJ. The audience requires more naturally from a female. And I don't know why that is the case. I know I was speaking to the girl from Blood and Water. I think her name is Amma. She's the lead. And she said that Twitter had her for having her braids in for a year. But we don't even realize what kind of hairstyles guys have, when they're changing it, how they're changing it. All I know, Ashanti, you've changed your hair at least 3 times during the past 6 weeks.
Babe.
Baby, I see you.
Baby girl, come on. I'm not during the people.
During the people, you're like doing the most. And that like, I don't take that lightly. Maybe Duncan, maybe Duncan won't notice that you've changed your hair at least 3 times during the past 8-week talk, but I do, and you do because you want you care, you want to be engaging with us, you know what I mean? And I just feel like it's stressful for me to have that pressure, which is why I shaved my hair, because I just felt like, no, you should still love me
without
all the things that are meant to be okay, you know. So yeah, the cost is a lot, and I'm done paying the price, to be honest with everyone.
Tata girl. No, I resonate so much with that, because hair is also such a source of anxiety. Like, you need to look the part, and when you don't look the part, like the entire time, regardless of how good you are at your job, you'd be thinking, second guessing yourself, like, are they listening to me? Are they taking me seriously? What's going on, you know? So, babes, I hear you. And also, speaking to your point of being done paying the cost, right? We have, especially in South Africa, we have this whole thing of being imbogodo. You hit a woman, you hit a rock, right? Speaking to how we are
resilient.
Like, but this is the chat about how the productivity level stays the same, regardless of all the cut that we're dealing with. So clearly we are rocks, right? But actually we're not. And we shouldn't be dealing with so much. But I do think these conversations like this are so important, because it helps us shift the narrative. We are not rocks to be beaten with whatever force, as in how society decides, and they're like, no, she'll be fine. They're like, she'll be, because she's a woman, she's a rock. You know, we really need to change the narratives. We speak about ourselves. Yes, Hannah, come in.
I wanted to ask a difficult question, but like, what if we just like took off the makeup and the hair and we just rebelled? Like, because actually, in a way, the funny part is that the cost of turning up and looking a certain way is something that we actually could change fairly fast. Like, if we just didn't, it might, you know, it's tough, because I mean, I have this debate with one of my guy friends a lot, and he's like, oh, girl, why do women wear makeup to the workplace? It's confusing. And I'm like, oh, you know, I want to strangle him for all sorts of other reasons. But he's got a point, you know. It's like, what that to some extent we're putting out a mixed message, you know, and what do we want to look a certain way, to be attractive in a certain way because it's expected of us. And at the same time, if we didn't, would we be considered to be frumpy, or would we be brave? Like, you know, and like, what would that look like? I don't know.
Okay, I see you, Sheikh. I see you, Jade, but I want to just say one thing. My aunt, who is the cannabis queen of the South, always says something. She says, this revolution is easy. All we have to do is change our minds. And that's it. Yeah. That's literally all we have to do about everything, change our minds. But that is the thing, and that is, for me, why I do the work that I do and I write, because that is the crux of our problem as South Africans being free. We are not mentally free. Like, we are not. And so the changing of mindsets is more difficult than the voting or the fighting for economic freedom.
Yeah, no, of course.
Skip me.
I must skip you. But what did you want to say, Mama? I'm coming back to you. I see. I'm coming back to you.
There's so much. This is sparking so many things. Firstly, the cost. As a mother, at times you're not able to attend your kids' activities because weighing being at work and going to your kids' activities, and what will people say at work? What will they say? You are trying to climb the corporate ladder and you're busy chasing after your children at school. So sometimes that is the cost that parents pay for being parents and being in the executive positions at work. That's the problem. But also, I feel there are terms that we, Uhaga has correctly said, that we as women need to lead this revolution and change how people perceive women in the workspace. And I feel like there are women empowerment. I work in the government space where you have women empowerment posts or BEE posts. That is reducing women to those posts and statistics. Hire a woman because they are capable. They can do what you hire them to do. Let them empower themselves. Let me get into the space. I'm capable, and I'll see the need to empower me further. So that is my worry, and that is the cost that we are all paying. And the question is always, how did you get into this position? So there's always something behind you getting a bigger position in the workspace if you are working for government. It's a problem, it's a narrative that we need to change. And I feel also in terms of the country policies, that needs to be reviewed and changed. We must stop reducing people to BE positions and women empowerment positions and all these terms. But also what I've found, because I've been in the space for quite a while now, and there was a time where I was still younger than this. I'm a woman, and another woman, Jada said, it's women that sometimes do this to other women. Another woman would call you Lengane, which is this kid, would call you Lentombazane, which is this girl at work, and you are there, you are capable, you can do what you are there to do. So I think we are the ones to change the narrative, change the space, and transform the space to what we want to see in the workplace. Thanks, Shanti.
Thanks, Nhlanhla. Okay, Jade, I see you, and then check.
Oh no, I think I just wanted to, with the makeup thing, right? I had a friend of mine, just tell a story, but basically I had a friend of mine who wore makeup to her corporate job every single day. And one day she just decided, you know what, let me just not wear makeup and see what happens. And she said the whole day she had to deal with people asking, is she okay?
Are you okay?
Are you sick? Does she feel like herself?
I know. You look tired,
like,
darling. No,
yeah, whole day. And it was from everybody. So yeah, I would like to try that experiment where we just all don't wear makeup, just show up as we are and see how that goes down. But yes, I do.
Babe, this only works if we all do it. This only works if we all do it. Otherwise, it won't work.
100%, 100%.
Jade, we said 100% at the same time, by the way.
That's so funny. That's so funny, guys. But I think you guys also raised such an important point about how we as women need to lead the charge, and it starts with us, right? So I remember many lifetimes ago, there was a friend of mine who would always wear makeup, full face. You know, you're beating your face like fun day, all of the things. So like 2 hours, 2.5 hour situation before you leave the front door. Baby girl failed her 3rd year because there were mornings where she didn't get up in time to get to lectures and to attend class or whatever because she was busy with the makeup, right? So she never made honorarium to qualify for exams because of the makeup situation.
That's a priority problem, I think.
No, but for me, less than it being a priority problem, I think it also speaks to the thing of self-worth, right? That I don't think I can do the thing without the things that society tells me I have to have on to be able to.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but I think also sometimes women, I mean, not sometimes, a lot of us, and I speak to other women, is we suffer from imposter syndrome. So just like what Nhlanhla said about feeling, people do ask you, how did you get that position? You know, which I don't think they ask men. So you do walk around with this feeling of being like undeserved, or, you know, everyone's going to find out I'm not as good as I portray myself to be. So you overwork and you kill yourself to get it done because you need to prove a point. So yeah, I think, the emotional cost is also quite high, guys.
Yeah, I do agree. And I think one of the things that is helpful for me whenever I get into my imposter syndrome, I go, give me the confidence of a mediocre white man. And then I remember how amazing I am, and then I continue with life, okay? Because mediocrity is the standard. And just if I could have the confidence of a mediocre white man, anything is possible.
Oh man. Yeah, you know, to that point, I mean, it's really funny, by the way. I hear you. What's interesting though is that you know, back to this confidence thing, and I have to say, I want to like really say it before we leave, because I think that's it's quite directly linked to salary, and I kind of touched on it earlier, but I believe that you shouldn't have to adopt the confidence of a mediocre white man. I feel like the system should have a catch to not have you be in that position in the first place. You shouldn't have to
100%.
come with evaluation. Like if you're talking about artist or gig fees or job, you know, proposals, there should be bar, you know, a good bar to start off with, so that we don't have to like low blow ourselves all the time. And I think that's, you know, if you're coming with this idea that, you know, I don't feel so great today. Oh, my skin doesn't look so great. I don't feel so great today. And that happens to be your salary negotiation day. Like, then what, you know? Or like, I'm feeling crampy today, or I'm feeling, you know, exhausted because my kid's sick. And that happens to be the day where you have to be the boss. Like, I feel like companies have to take a lot more responsibility to create environments that don't allow us to kind of catch ourselves at our own game of being grateful and apologetic rather than like serious. And I think the entire system of salary negotiation was designed in the industrial age and doesn't fit anymore. I'm either right for the position or not. It's not a negotiation. If that's what you were going to pay someone, you should pay them that. And the other thing is, like, it's so within our power systemically to just create flexi working hours to accommodate for the kinds of lives we have. To, you know, those types of things are examples of us not having to try fit in, that just that the system, the structures of business are evolving to just be more humanitarian rather than more, you know, I don't think men particularly are out to get us in all cases. I think the systems are a bit stupid. I think we, you know, I think there's just a lot more interrogation that can happen on the organizational level at like, are these policies still helpful? Are they promoting happy humans, not just happy women or happy men, but is this actually working for humans, you know? Exactly.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that's a perfect segue to the next question. I'm speaking about how confidence is directly linked to your salary. Like, you don't get what you don't ask for also, you see, and feeling worthy to ask for what you are worth. So the whole thing of like, know your worth, add tax, triple it, and then add tax, and then that's your salary number. Like, you know?
Yeah, that's my life. That's how that's how everyone started really feeling some type of way about me in the booking space. I think to the point where my team just was one of the few teams that don't do 5 shows a weekend or 4 shows a weekend, obviously pre-COVID. But it's me putting my foot down. And I think that's the only thing that is important for me to leave my industry of live performance, is with females knowing that what it costs you to get up on stage, be confident and be comfortable is what you need to be getting at all costs. And most of the time, that's definitely what I've fought for, but it's really put me in a space where I've been told to my face that I'm not worth this amount. And, you know, you really second question that. And I think that's when you try and add, you know, to make yourself more appealing. So I think that's when you add more people to your band. Now you have a 6-piece band, and now you also have a hairstylist, and now you have, you're trying so hard to prove that, but
well, you have to externalize what's hurting inside, you know, like now I have to, you know,
because Casper Vest or Nasty C, shout out to them, will just come on as themselves and their DJ and be enough and considered enough. And be paid more than what I was asking for to show up with the 6-piece band, which are all people themselves that have rates themselves, and also need to show up as well, because now we want the band to look good as well. So it's so difficult trying to instill that system, but it's difficult when I say no to the show and then Simi says yes, or if Simi says no and then she kind of says yes. We'll always find someone who can do the job for cheaper, but we can't replace AKA or Nasty C or Casper, you know, but we'll get a cheaper female that's better than you. And I think that's how we end up turning on each other. And I think sometimes exactly what we've been saying, the problems that we find, you know, are not always put on us by men, but we take them on ourselves. So it's like, I want to be, I don't know, like you said earlier, it's about us coming together. It can't be a few people not wearing makeup to work and a few girls shining. We all have to do it, but it's so hard to get us all in the space of thinking that this is the standard fee that we're charging, for example, I don't know, multi-choice or eminent. This is what we're charging for a show, because they have shows all year round and they're always having shows. Let's come together and set the standard. I mean, and I think especially during COVID times, I feel like a lot of artists were exploited, because then you're not working. No one that holds a mic and performs live in front of an audience is working. Can't you just do this live performance for, you know, peanuts? And I think it is important for us. We don't have a union as musicians. We don't have that infrastructure, but it's important for us to rely on one another. And I tried to do that, backfires when you try and get everyone together. But that's how, honestly, the only way we can solve these things is all the girls, every artist. As soon as you consider yourself a female artist, we come together and we understand what is okay and what is not okay, what is exploitation and what is like the bare minimum, you know? And I think that's just me. And sometimes I've not worked a lot. I didn't work a lot during COVID because I'm still trying to stand my ground. But, you know,
as you should. As you should be, as you should be. Not as I see you nodding your head there, talking about the exploitation that happens in the workplace.
Thanks, Ashanti. I think for me, in terms of the salaries and pay scale, I haven't had that much of an experience, because in most cases it's set, it's policy, it's what you know, they follow policy and acts and what we should be paid. However, I know it happens, and we really need to stand together. I fully support what Shekinah is saying in terms of us coming together to change the perspective and to change how things are, because she would be charging what she's charging and the next person is charging much less. And so in a way, it allows for further exploitation of women and more women coming into the space. And it goes back to what we were saying about it turning around and it being women exploiting other women in the workspace, it being women who misjudge other women in the workspace, wherein we need to come together and start changing the narrative as a united front. But also in terms of the workspace that I'm in, there are many other things besides the pay scale. There are many other issues and factors that come in that challenge us as women being in the space, that make us want to look more like men than women that we are, and women that are more capable. I liked what you were saying, Ashanti, in terms of sometimes when you get into that zone, you think, let me just imagine that mediocre white man version who is so confident, because you come across people like that, but we always reduce ourselves, our capabilities, and allow for them. Because if you ask how much you want to be paid, you are so shy to say, this is what I'm worth, and pay me what I'm worth. Because you are a woman and you are expected to be submissive. That's a problem. We bring in wrong perspective. We bring in the Bible where it does not believe. It's supposed to be, we are all at work. We are here to work. Let us work. Thank you.
I read, sorry, I just wanted to ask Notlasa something. I read that Lifeline report or that document that you sent over to us before, and because I'm a nerd, so I read everything a lot. There was something interesting that I noticed, which is that South Africa doesn't force transparent reporting on.
Yeah, we don't report on the gender parity.
You know, because something like the pay gap or certain policies are different in different countries. Like, I read that in Rwanda is actually one of the world leaders in female equality, and the reason is kind of terrifying because, you know, after the genocide, there were only women left. And so they occupied these positions of power and then changed the rules, you know, and the same in Iceland. Like, when you put women in charge to change the rules are different. And I was wondering what we could do, or if there was some interesting output of us to kind of just start asking, because if we don't know what the data really is, we don't know who we're picking a fight with and for what purpose. And I feel like that's something so tangible for us to kind of go like, just be transparent about this. Let's start there. Just like confess, friend, you know, like, yeah.
Absolutely. I think we really need to challenge that, because I'm sitting here saying that there is no gap. Maybe it's because there's no data to compare
Show the gap.
where I'm
Yes.
at and what the reality is, because I might be sitting there assuming that because the act and regulations say this is what is happening, whereas it's not really happening. So we really need to challenge that and really get the stats and know what is really happening, what is the actual picture compared to what is happening currently. So yes,
and it might
absolutely
be better than we think, and it might be different in different sectors, but I think it's something it's a great starting point. To begin the process of transformation, you have to understand the nature of the system anyway, you know, and go, okay, where is this the biggest problem? Which sectors need the most intervention? Or but to have that not be mandatory for me is interesting, and I think telling about, you know,
the kind of patriarchal society we live in. This is not news. In South Africa, you can rape somebody and still become president. Okay, like this is
I know. I mean,
crazy.
I mean that the cultural dimension is a whole other, you know, there's a whole other thing going on there, you know, in terms of the patriarchy. I mean, we haven't touched on that side of the world yet, you know.
Yeah, I think this is such a multifaceted, nuanced conversation that we're not going to be able to cover all the different aspects. But Jade, I want to bring you in here with regards to the, you know, confidence being directly linked to your salary. You don't get what you don't ask for, but even then having confidence as a woman to ask for what you're worth, you're seen as being aggressive. So like you can't win here, you know? So I just want to get your thoughts on that about, I mean, what's the line? Must you care what people think about your confidence? Like,
yeah, I definitely think, and I don't know, it's ingrained in us, but our approach is definitely like very grateful. Like we're grateful to get an offer, we're grateful to be in this space, you know, whereas men have a very entitled approach, and it's kind of like the art of negotiation for them shows their masculinity or how great they are at their job, you know. And so for me, I've had kind of conversations with males in general in my life, and they're like, you know, you need to ask for this number, and if they say no, then they don't know your value and walk away. But for me as a woman, I know that could actually very well happen, you know, so we definitely, we do know that. So you definitely do have an approach of being like, you second guess yourself, you know, and without knowing the data, there definitely is a pay gap between males and females.
Guys, when we go to the shop, nobody says, what do you expect to pay for this item? No, there's a price, right? Like you don't negotiate an expectation of the Coca-Cola you're going to buy. There is a price.
Exactly.
And that's the fundamental principle, is that we have to bargain for our own value. Like we're in a market, you know, like we're haggling. Like, no, we're not haggling. The thing has inherent value, and this is its value. Take it or leave it. Drop the pen, you know?
What you just said, what the both of you just said, especially you, James, speaking about how men have a very entitled approach to work, and whereas we are very grateful just to even be in this space. I'm remembering a friend of mine, I don't want to mention names, but he basically explains to me that, no, Ashanti, I go to work for a specific purpose. I know what it is I want to do with my life, and the jobs that I apply for fit into that plan. So if I get a fixed term contract or a 2-year contract, I'm there for 2 years to go and learn the skill, contribute what I need to contribute, knowing that this job fits into my grander plan of what makes me happy. I'm not going there to go and make those people money. Like, I'm not there for the job. The job is there to help me achieve my dreams. And the moment my guy friend said this to me, things shifted, because I was just like, actually, you're so right. Because you spend most of your day at work. And if you're not, and if it doesn't align with whatever it is that you're called to do in life generally, if you're not working in alignment with your purpose, you are going to be frustrated, regardless of how much you get paid or what the job is or whatever. But I think just looking for work and applying for jobs and salary negotiating, et cetera, you're sure that you have the skill and you know it fits into your plan somehow. That's how you approach it. And I promise you, the moment he said that to me. The next 2 jobs I got worked like that, and it made sense to me.
Yeah,
And
but you know, if you look at how the history of why women entered the workforce in the beginning, it was to make money, not to have careers. They went to supplement the man's income because, you know, of depressions and things that were happening in the world. So there's a huge shift for a woman to shift between I'm going there to make money to I'm going to have a career, you know, which is very different. And and exactly like your male friend said, he's there to get utility from the thing rather than to give it its best years or its time or its loyalty, or it's not 100%. The same game. And we come in with like, I'm loyal to my company or I'm loyal to my thing. Exactly. And I'll take everything on the chin because I'm a team player and we're here until we all gray, you know. Like
But I think, sorry, Ashanti, but just to make one point, if you just look at the music industry, for example, right? I mean, I can probably think of one music executive that's female. You know, the music industry feels like an old boys club, you know, and it's males at the top. And there's lots of women in the music industry, don't get me wrong, but they're the bottom feeders, right? To be honest. And that translates into pay as well. You don't have women as kind of the top earners and occupying the top position. Not because there aren't women that can do this, just because that's how it's always been, you know, and it's a male-dominated sort of industry. So I know we definitely don't have data, but for me, it has to change. Should this push you away from working in the music industry? I don't think so, because somehow we need every woman to get their way in through the door to work their way up, and you know, again, and like change from the top kind of thing, not change from the bottom.
But Jade, like, I so agree with you. Like, what's interesting though for me is that femininity and is the value that the creative arts need so badly. The maternal, the protective, like artists have traditionally been on the raw end of the stick, on the, you know, losing end of the battle for as long as art has existed. And it's actually these very qualities that are the ones that will shift it in, you know, in the other direction. It's like imperative. And I'm seeing a lot of shift and change, but I think it's really that changing. It's not just changing the gender of the person in the corner office. It's changing the ethos
of the company,
of the company.
100%. And that is no, 100%. Sorry, Hagar. Finish the thought, because that was a segue. That's so, I mean, that is so relevant, because when you talk about company culture ethos, you know, it's not enough exactly similarly to just hire a diverse and inclusion officer and there we've ticked our boxes, right? And we hire women, there we've ticked our boxes, and what permeates throughout the entire organization. And as a segue to our third question is, at an organizational level, what responsibility do companies have to mitigate rape culture? Because we live in a society that celebrates and glorifies alcohol abuse, drug abuse, reckless sex. And this is the society we live in. So from sports to music to whatever, man, like sex sells, right? And I think, so the question then becomes, in what ways do we as women working in these different industries, how do we affect change? Like, how do we, you know, empower ourselves as change agents within a context in a society that is like this, you know? And if you're, for example, if you're finding yourself working in an organization where you don't have women at a leadership level, what do you do to affect change in that context? Like, what would be the best way to move forward? And sometimes I want to give this to you, Mama, to kick us off here.
Okay, thanks, Ashanti. I think the first thing is we need to stop sweeping issues under the carpets and addressing such issues. And as women, I keep saying that as women, we need to take the lead. We need to lead transformation in our spaces. And I think also in the space, I keep referring to the space that I'm so familiar with, the government space where I'm working, wherein you also have all these men who will take advantage of the fact that you are women or there are young women around them. And we as women need to lead this transformation and making sure that workspace is safe enough for all women in the workspace to flourish in the workspace without having to compromise themselves and who they are because they are women. I think that's the main thing. That's the main thing that we need to do. We have the power to transform policy. We need to do that.
Yeah, 100%. So kind of I want to bring you in here because I saw you shasha your meshos when Nonhlanhla said, sweeping things under the rug.
Everything is swept under the rug, in my opinion, when it comes to men in our country, the lists and all sorts of things that I don't think I have enough information to have an opinion on. But for me, I think to try and answer your question, because I really struggle to see a way out of these kind of dilemmas, I just know that I'm not going to stop trying, even though I'm like, oh, this is an endless battle. But for me, I think of Cardi B, I think of Meg Thee Stallion, WAP currently, and I think of owning it. And I know it's a common topic, but taking back our sexuality and owning it. And understanding that me being half naked in a music video and speaking about WAP is not for you to, it's not for a man, it's for ourselves for the first time, which is why people are so shook by the concept of these women, these new female rappers that are just so sexual and unapologetic about it. Because usually, with music videos and with women and stuff like that, it's like you go to a strip club, you there for my eyes, she's here to dance with me, or this music video, this girl's dancing on my lap, I'm throwing money at her, or all the women in the music video are here. We're all there for a man to look at us. It's like never the other way around, where it's like we're just owning the fact that this is who we are and how we look. And it also goes back to Lizzo. I just remember some comments from Lizzo's post where someone's like, I'm tired of this. Like, people are tired of seeing a big-sized woman wearing skimpy clothes, and I'm so happy, about it, and it's helped me so much, because I'm in the space where I'm shooting music videos again, and I think it's been so long since I've been in front of the camera where I'm like, I'm in a music video. A lot has had to change with everything that I'm doing. I can't be here having these conversations but not being able to own my own body issues on camera, so I try to put myself out there a bit recently and try to be like, this is me in a costume, like it or not. There's wobbly bits, there's this, there's that, there's this, and on top of it, I think about an experience I had this week where I went out with a friend of mine who's just known for being beautiful in the industry. She's a presenter, that's what she's known for. And I sat next to her at a dinner, and everyone walked past and greeted me, and they were like, hey, how are you? So nice to see you, Sheikh. And they were like, hey, oh my God, you look so hot. And I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not hot. Like, when you walk past an oversized, like, am I not hot, And I realized that this is the idea that people have, but I know what I think I am. I think I'm hot. And I need to be able to own that for myself, and not blame women for the way they dress and for asking for it. Hey, Sipo!
Yes. So I was just waiting for you to finish to ask Sipo, hello, welcome. Sipo, so you've been listening to the girls talk. Now, as an intro segue, what are your thoughts as a whole man in the industry? That for all intents and purposes,
such cool guys. I'm so excited.
Yeah, this is such an important conversation that you guys are having. And there should be a way of forcing men in the positions of power to listen to these conversations. Because I think the first problem is a lot of people are oblivious to some of the struggles that women go through, especially in the entertainment industry, because that's where I spend my time. And it's so enlightening that there is so much work that needs to be done. But if we don't start dragging men that have the ability to change these things, to be part of the conversation and actually hold them accountable, right? So, set targets or things that need to change, and then call these people back into a forum 6 months later, a year later, and say, okay, well, we spoke about this 6 months ago or a year ago. What in your space have you been able to change? Because I think one of the things that we try and do is we try and reach out to government to make changes. And I'm not saying that government shouldn't be held responsible, but the reality is, I, in my position, I have the ability to make some decisions that can contribute towards the change. And as long as I keep blaming government or blaming a bigger system, then I'll always, be left to not be accountable for not making change. And I think, there are things that I'm going to take back from this conversation and look at internally and see what I need to do. I mean, even the points that she kind of raised about being a female artist going to perform and being treated in a way that doesn't allow her to present herself the way she wants to be presented. That's not okay. And I think we do really need to hold people individually accountable for what they are doing in their space to bring about the change that needs to be seen.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. But I want to just double down on what you said about dragging men into these conversations, right? And as someone who is at that level in the music industry, I want to pick your brain on what you think. What do you think at an organizational level? So as a record company, you are in charge of artists that are out here singing songs and that, perpetuate all sorts of patriarchal things. So at what is the line between now artistic freedom and organizational responsibility that sees us hear messages, listen to music that doesn't necessarily degrade society, but enhances us and, helps us heal. So I think from an organizational point of view, what should be done, not just as on an individual level?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're being honest and if we're not, chickening out of the honest conversation, it is actually quite easy because those are two separate things. So from an organizational perspective, my responsibility is to find women and employ women at a senior level in the business and give them the power and the wealth that should come with the role. So it's not good enough to have women in the business and say, we have women, but they're all paid less than their counterparts, or they don't have the decision-making power. And, without getting too what's the word? Too transparent, but we've been on that journey for a while now. So at Universal, our COO is Eloise Kelly. She was the CEO at Ogilvy. She's come in, she has the power. She is the next in the hierarchy after me. We have several senior people in the business who are females. Umutso is the head of HR, the head of live, actually, Shekinah knows, Morgan Ross is a woman. So from an organizational perspective, it is just about making a conscious decision to employ women and to employ them fairly and to remunerate them fairly. So it's not to pay somebody less because of their gender or because of their race. So that's straightforward. From a music and an artistic perspective, I always leave the artistry to the artist. It is not my place to say, wear less, wear more, wear different colors. And that goes beyond the race, the gender conversation. But what we do have a responsibility, though, is to protect our artists, female and male. So in other words, it's to make sure that if they are going out to do shows and they are traveling late at night and back and forth, etc., what are the arrangements that are in place to make sure that they are safe and that they don't feel like they just been thrown into a space where they have to defend themselves almost. But also from an artistic perspective, Shekinah is absolutely right. What females, what women choose to sing about, how they choose to perform is totally up to them. And it doesn't give us any right or power over them because of their choice. Just because somebody might be in a video dressed in a certain way, it doesn't mean that we're allowed or we're enabled to demean them or to talk negatively or seductively about them. It's just the same as if a male artist was to dress in a certain way in a video or have present themselves in a way that might not be aligned with what I might have thought was cool. It's not my space to say what's cool, what's not cool, what they should or what they shouldn't do. But we do have a role to protect their decision and make sure that they feel that they've got support.
Sure. So, ladies, what do you think about the men's perspective on this conversation about women in the workplace? I think Sipho has given some quite interesting things for us to think about. And also, you know, in listening to you talk, Sipho, one of the things that comes up for me is it's like, I wish more men thought like you. I wish more men in power thought this way, you know, because it's one thing to talk gender equality, it's another thing to walk it and to actually embed it in your workplace, in your life, and all those things. So should kind of, you know, maybe kick us off on your reflections on what Sipho said here.
I know that every interaction that I've had with UMG has just been definitely a lot of females, and really, really great females. So I appreciate that. And I do think that I wanted to, and it was kind of my vision for the talks, is I wanted to force the men in my industry to listen to this, because you know, men in my industry will do anything for a feature from me. But are you there when we're trying to fight the struggle of these things, you know? So for me, it's like, it's difficult to get men involved into listening, and that's the problem. It's how we get men to listen that will be the best, you know? But yeah, I think that I'm just grateful that Sipho's here, because it has to start with one, you know, and then from there on, we hope that Sipho spreads the message, and that's how it works, you know. And that's just my hope for the talks, is that the conversations open themselves up, and not only in the music industry, in all industries. We need to have men having these conversations. Similarly to the GBV conversation and the rape conversations, we have it amongst ourselves as girls. We're not talking to our guy friends about that because we're too embarrassed about those things, like periods. You know, we're too embarrassed to have the conversation with men. And I would like more men in our industry to even care about that, because when it comes to having a female vocal on a male song, it's okay. You know, the Jerusalem is a big song. It's sung by a female. Are we also singing her praises when we sing Master KG's praises? And I'm not putting anyone on the spot, you know, I'm just saying that, you know, Fetch Your Life is Msaki and Prince KB. Are we making sure we give Msaki the credit that we're giving Prince KB? Does Msaki have the same house that Prince KB has? Does she have all the BMWs? Is she getting paid the same when she goes to a gig and people want to hear Fetch Your Life? Are they going to pay Prince KB more to show up, or Msaki more to show up? And I don't know. I'm just asking the questions, and I'll share my hate to use people as examples, but it's the same with me. I started off my career with people calling me Sketchy Bongo. People didn't recognize me as a voice because I'm featured with a male artist. So it's trying to be able to get the same recognition. It's not about being better than men or whatever. It's about equality. You know, the femme space is just about being seen the same. Similarly to our talks last week with the moms, it's see our children as children. Don't put them up against each other and give my child a doll and my son a gun toy. It's seeing ourselves as one, you know. So it's a tricky topic, and I don't want to put Sipho on the spot either. But thank you so much.
But thank you, Shekina, because you make a great point, because I think a lot of men run away from these kinds of conversations because they hear feminism, and feminism is simply the radical idea that women are also human. That's it. We're not. That's it. That's all we say. So Jade, I want to bring you in here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think definitely what I echo what Shek's sentiments are, that we need, you know, men to be talking about these issues as well. I definitely think that also men, in the absence of female company, need to make sure that they're perpetuating these kinds of sentiments. So that's where it's really important in male circles and in male forums, that there is at least one male that is standing up and saying equality is important and having that conversation. So for me, it's really important that men are also held accountable to be change makers. Yes, we will lead the way, but we need them as our counterparts to say, I'm next to you and I'm walking this journey with you, you know. And when you see inequality in the workspace and you are in a position of power, to be able to speak up, or to be able to have those very difficult, and because they're uncomfortable conversations to have, you know, but to be able to kind of do that on behalf of women, for me, I think that's really what I want to say to all men out there. But thank you for sharing with us.
It's super uncomfortable. It's super uncomfortable. And I also feel bad, but yeah.
No, but the
But you know,
uncomfortability
I
is
think
where we grow. Yes, sorry, Sipho, come in.
so. I was just saying that, you know, I think it's interesting the number of issues that have come out during a COVID period, right? And all these difficult conversations that we have come out in the craziest year possible. And I think we should take advantage of that as much as possible. Whilst people are still on lockdown or going in and out of lockdown, and people are still Zooming and all that stuff, there should be more conversations like this. And I really think, and I know this is the last one of the series, but I think you guys should call out certain males in the industry and invite them publicly to attend these conversations and put those on blast that don't attend. You know what I mean? Because we need to get more aggressive about the change that we need to see.
Just a pause there. Just a pause. I want to remind everybody what happened when women did this with the RU reference list, right? So Rhodes University did that. They called out everybody list. People got like it's not an easy thing to do, to put men on blast, especially given the whole
I think it's also so I think it's really, really important to realize that like individuals can't change systems like overnight, you know, and that I'm the idea terrifies me to drag someone in and have them entirely change a system that is as entrenched in our DNA. So I totally hear your
But
I totally love the idea.
I don't really agree with you, right? I think, and I'm not, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying calling out people on personal issues or saying you must do, but just to say, look, there are three majors in South Africa from a recording industry perspective. Can we have a representative from Universal, from Sony, from Warner, and from Apple, Africori, Spotify, come onto a conversation? And just have a conversation. So at that point, you're not really attacking anybody. You're not aggressively putting somebody in a position. But then the next part of your statement is, why should I not be held accountable for making change in the company that I'm in if I have the power to make decisions?
I'm not such a, I love the concept of that. Like I'm so with you, and I wish I'm actually expressing a wish that it were so possible and easy. I think what I'm trying to say is that when you look at the cofactors that give rise to these issues, they're so deep and they're so ingrained and they're like, and I think you're totally right that the conversation is where you start. But and we were speaking earlier about how we're also complicit in a lot of these issues. And I think it's more the desire to actually be bold enough to posture solutions and say, this is what we would like for all of us.
100% and to have the courage to do so.
To say, I'd like this rather than you know, you're accountable, we'd all love this, you know.
I think when we were like backstory, when we were trying to put together the talks and the conversations, this was before COVID. We wanted to do it from a live perspective. For the longest time, we've been trying to change the narrative of Rosefest, that it's not this female, we're here and men are here, but trying to do that. And the idea was to have men in the industry that support Rosefest and sort of support like a petition, as if to say, this lineup needs to be 80% female, else I'm not DJing at Black Coffee, or else I'm not performing as so and so and so. So for me, it's just like, I really like what Sipho is saying. And I'm also in that space where it's like, yeah, kind of like you have the opportunity to tell the promoter that there's not enough female DJs on this lineup, and there's female DJs at home that are not eating, but the same male DJs are still performing, you know? So it's difficult to make that happen, but we can see that there's a problem, you know? And with that problem, it also kind of branches down into the fact that females don't even, young girls that are at home don't even have the opportunity to dream about being a DJ because they don't see their icons or themselves in those roles, you know? So I would like to try and do something like that, as difficult as it seems.
But I think another thing on that point is it just highlights the importance of allyship, right? So like women, we stay calling out, and even just the concept of calling out someone is like so mired with the whole thing of slut shaming and but where were you? What were you doing? What were you wearing? So I do think that when we're talking about call out culture, not necessarily cancel culture, that this is where men can play a greater role. Because if it's the man calling out other men for problematic behavior within the industry, it's taken more seriously. In the same way, when it's a white person that calls out racism, it's taken more seriously. Like, this is how the thing functions, you know? But guys, we have 10 minutes left. So I want to get concluding thoughts and what essentially, for our viewers, for people watching, what is a takeaway message from what we're talking about today of women in the workplace and how we break this glass ceiling that never seems to actually break? Yeah, so if I want to maybe start with you. Maybe not concluding thoughts, but add further some spice and then conclude, you know, like, because you haven't been here for a whole hour.
Yeah, look, again, I just want to congratulate everybody that's been part of putting these conversations together. They're really important conversations, and I will definitely do what I can in my space to bring these conversations into there from a practical perspective of how do we make the change that we need to make, and I'll also be available to engage. You know, sorry, I'm terrible sometimes at getting back to people, and I apologize. Liz has been amazing at reaching out. We've just been in a crazy period, but I'd love to continue getting involved. So even if it's not in the form of an online conversation, but if there are meetings and conversations that need to happen in office rooms and smaller meetings, I think we should have those. And I'm definitely committed to do what I can in that space to make it work. But keep having the conversations, keep calling men into them, and keep asking them what they're going to do. I think, you know, as scary as it sounds, we need people to take note and to participate.
100%, 100%. Thank you so much. Nhlanhla?
Thanks, Ashanti. And I think from what has been discussed earlier, what was discussed earlier as well, I think it's very important that as we unite as women to transform the spaces that we are all occupying, we need to make sure that we don't leave men behind. I'm so glad that Sipo joined us and brought in this perspective, that we need to bring in women. It takes me back to the fact that as we empower young girls, we need to remember that there are young boys out there that are not empowered, and what's going to happen when they meet. So it comes back to us, and also the workspace, that we need to also bring in men, because they start using this using women empowerment as a condescending term, because they don't really understand what is going on with us. So we need to work together as a united front as women, but also bring in men to the space. That's my concluding remark. Thank you, Ashanti, and thanks for having me in the space.
Thank you. Hagar?
Hey. First of all, I wanted to say that is so dope that you're not doing this in Women's Month only, because every month is Women's Month, and hello. And I really feel like frustrated when we have these little moments to like all converge and get like all this content ready for this 1 month, and actually we don't even think about the fact that 11 of the 12 are Men's Month. Like, it's silly. But so that I really love that you're kind of really stretching this through the calendar, and that it's not like a momentary thing. I really respect that. And I think what I wanted to maybe end on is ways that we can build stronger systems that where the structure is the governance, so that we don't have to be the male and the female and all the things. We don't have to be the Swiss Army knife all the times. If we had better systems and policies around us, we could just be. I think that I'd love to see more flexible working hours for women across the board. I'd love to see a different strategy for salary negotiation that doesn't imply, like I said, like haggling for your livelihood. I'd love to see a world in which some of these archaic systems are just challenged. I'd love to see more policies. I'd love to see more paternity leave, so that maternity leave isn't seen as something, you know, that is pulling us out of the workspace. I'd like it, you know, I think in Iceland they have equal maternity and paternity leave, which tells a story, right? It's like the story is that we are co-parenting, you know, we are both part of this family. It's not my role. And I think those are all policy level things. And I know that those are the hardest things to change, but I really think that those are the serious changes that really, you know, the other stuff is really, you know, there's always this dance between the masculine and the feminine, and masculine doesn't have to mean male and feminine doesn't have to mean female. It's a dance, and it's tricky and it's sticky and it's strange, and we get in, you know, and there's no one size fits all answer, but certainly our policies and certainly our governance, and would love to see just a better structure for us to be.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Jade, do you want to give us your final thoughts?
Yeah, I think I just want to say that there is no ceiling for us, really. We have we have everything we need. We are enough. Women are extremely resilient creatures, and our empathy is what makes us succeed, if we're honest. So for me, representation is very important. So every female, wherever you are, in whatever space you're in, you're doing important work. And because you can do it, I can do it, and so can the next little girl. So yeah, we're enough.
Thank you. Shekinah?
I'm just so touched by everything that's been said. We are enough. Masculinity should not have to be only a man's world. Geez, that's cool. And I just want to say to all the females, like Jade said, we are enough. You're not different to your brother or your male colleagues. You're just good enough. And always remember to be okay to shout your name, guys.
100%. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining me in Conversation Super. Thank you for joining. We did need your perspective today. Thank you, all of you, for watching. And I think there is no ceiling. Follow your fire. Do it anyway. Go forth and conquer. That is the lesson for today. Go forth and conquer. Please and thank you, guys. Happy Sunday. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.